All right, good evening, everybody. This is the Daniel Boone Area School District Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. We are starting at 6:30, so I hope everybody enjoyed their 30-minute mini vacation here. We typically start at 6. If we can start here, we have a brief agenda with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody can please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if we can go around the table and get a roll call of folks sitting at these tables, starting with Mrs. Mikowski. Just state your name.
Shelley Mikowski.
Dane Oaks-O'Neill.
Carol Bites.
Connor Kurtz.
Rob Hurley. Dave Rathgeb.
We also have administrators present and 2 members of the public. Up next, procedures for public participation. Since we have a small crowd tonight, we can, if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and I'll try to loop you into the conversation. We're going to end at 7:10. The board has an executive session before tonight's meeting, so we're going to have to make it through quickly, but seeing as we have a very brief agenda, I don't think that'll be a problem. All right, up next, textbook and core instructional material approval. There should be a chart attached to your agenda that shows the 3 textbooks and 2 other things, other programs that we're looking to approve in advance to the full board. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hurley to walk us through that and to answer any questions, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve these if we like, or alter and then approve.
Okay, guys, basically these are the textbooks and core instructional materials that we need. This is what we need to get going for next year, guys. On here you're going to see several things. You can see the biology textbook. Basically what we're looking at with biology, that textbook series is in drastic need of being replaced. They're in horrible condition. They're falling apart. They're using duct tape to keep the books together. It's also it's a keystone course, so it's very important for us as a school system to have good materials right there. So that's where the biology is coming from. You can see the one particular note is the teachers, in particular, like the supplemental resources that were available for the special education students, and that was one reason why that this particular textbook was chosen over some of the other ones that were available that's out there. When you look at quantity and estimated total price, ultimately that kind of those numbers, that's approximate, guys. They're going to you have to look at our tally list when the actual enrollments of the courses are to get the exact number, but it's going to be 5 to 10 one way or the other from there. That's just using some estimates based on historical data, population, things of that nature. But that'll give you a good idea of prices and what it'll cost the district. The second book that's on there is for mathematics. It is for pre-algebra and 8th grade. Our teacher, we need to align our textbooks with the PA core curriculum in 8th grade in particular. The teachers tried to modify it unsuccessfully on their own last year. They tried to supplement what we had with those resources. We really feel it's a necessary thing for our kids. We want to give them all the tools they can to be successful in there. It'll also help the teachers with the resources that come with it. It comes with some online materials, things of that nature. They looked at this and they looked at like the Go Math series, and they thought this would be the best one for pre-algebra for 8th grade students. This would be the most important textbook we could get there.
And even though we're using Go Math at the earlier levels,
it won't be a problem at all. We'll be in good shape with this one. And you can see the cost there, and the quantity is 200s, and we base that based on past percentages that we're enrolling into the pre-algebra course itself. This one also, it emphasizes some algebra strands, and that's one thing the high school thought was real important for preparation for their algebra course at the high school. If you go down to the next one, and this is an accounting textbook. The big advantage of this textbook, we only need a class set of the textbook itself, but what it does is it provides software for the students that comes with this that allows them to do modern accounting. And so that's really what is necessary to do. The textbook aligns with the software that comes with that. And so apparently they need to do that, because right now I guess they're doing things by paper and pencil in there. So that's a requirement. Obviously it's a very small expenditure, but the business department really felt it was a necessary expenditure going forward. The next one down there is Alex. This is software for the new math class at the high school. This is for a course that is primarily diagnostic and prescriptive. It's there to suit the individual needs of the students. Alex is very powerful software. What it does is it figures out where students are at to begin, and it modifies the program, not just at the beginning when they take a pretest, but also as the student goes through the program itself. If they're struggling with a particular topic, it'll modify the program automatically for them. It does not substitute a teacher. A teacher also works with students in small groups when they find needs and things like that. This software was chosen in particular because of the technology behind it. It's very cutting edge. Also, we have, it's been used at the college level. One of our teachers has used it at the college level very successfully. So that's where Alex comes from.
Now, is that 55 licenses, is that per student, one license per student, or one per workstation?
It is per student, and the 55 is an estimate on the number of kids we're going to have in that course. Until we actually see the testing data and look at our data, it could vary. We think the number's pretty accurate, but when we actually look at our data, we'll get the exact number of licenses. We're confident we're within a reasonable range there in terms of where it will be. And then finally, we have the FOSS kits. This is for our science program in the elementary school. The FOSS kits are behind an example of one of our FOSS kits are behind you right there. Really what this is we want hands-on science in our science classrooms. The goal is to do science, not just read about science with kids. This is going to provide teachers with instructional materials and raw materials that they can use within their classroom so they can discover science and scientific principles in their classroom itself. This is for grades 1 through 5. Okay, you can see that's the total price for the kits. There will be some consumables that and it's not going to be too terribly expensive, that go in annually into the science budget. If they're using salt, for example, you have to replace that next year when they run out of it in the kit itself. But that's in the scheme of stuff that's incredibly small. That's the stuff that we need for this year, guys. We will, next year, we're anticipating a rather large, we have some social studies books and some additional science things we need to order. Next year is going to be pretty big, but I need to also tell you, we're looking at some things digitally that, first, from a curricular standpoint, potentially can be very, very powerful. We also may realize some cost savings, although we're hammering away at this. It's important. We want to be careful when we're doing this too, because basically we get one chance to do things right, Daniel Boone, in terms of the money. When we do it, we want to make sure we got it right. So we're looking at some things for next year, and we expect this list either from a software perspective or from a textbook list to be longer next year. Those are our new materials and our new core materials for this year.
Great. I have a few quick things, and then I'll turn it over to everybody else here. I want to make a correction to my chart. Mr. Hurley informed me that it's 51 FOSS kits, not 68, but that total price remains the same. Additionally, so quick question, you said that this is what you're looking forward to bring for next year. Mm-hmm. This is pretty much it at this point. We're not looking for any more major textbook purchases.
This is the new materials. The other textbook purchases are materials that we already have. For example, if we're in a situation, there are some additional textbook purchases, but they're in our individual building budgets. Okay. An example of how this could happen, well, I tell you, it will happen, is because if you have to go from 4 levels or 5 levels to 3 levels, you're going to need more of a certain textbook. Yeah. But that comes within the individual building budgets, and that's already included. Estimates are already included within their building budgets. What we have in front of you is your new core instructional materials going forward for next year.
Okay. Now, in terms of the budget here, are these are not in the budget right now?
These right here there are placeholders in our budget for these things. We've drilled down further. This is a more accurate, it's actually cheaper than what's in the budget, the placeholders. These numbers here, Lauren is going to get these. They're much more accurate than the placeholders that were there originally.
Last question, then I'll give it over to everybody else because I don't want to take up the entire period of time here. I just want to throw this out there. I had this thought, and it might be completely stupid, but I'm going to put it out there anyway. Instead of ordering, let's just say, and this is a thought exercise, I'm not necessarily advocating this. Instead of ordering 200 math textbooks, one for every student, could we structure our instruction in a way that instead of the book being tied to the student, it's tied more to the seat in the math class. So the book always stays in the classroom. And if we have a homework assignment, then we can have a worksheet or something. We could copy those problems and send home a worksheet. So instead of ordering 200 books, we're ordering 40 books, 50 books, and we can make these consumables that we use. If there's something that the student needs to take home to use, they can take that. And if we replicated that across the entire curriculum, if we made it more like the book stays in school and is shared among students, we can take these other things. Now, one of the downsides is, I guess, you won't be able to consult that information at home, but you can. There might be solutions there as well.
There's a cost benefit to anything that you do, in terms of, but when you're looking at like mathematics, and I appreciate what you're saying there, but I know some schools do what you're saying, but they do it with the digital technology, actually. They'll buy it, like for example, there's different ways to look at things. If you buy a textbook from Prentice Hall and they purchase it, it might be like $35 for the license on an iPad, let's say. What some school districts do, they'll actually purchase a hard copy for the classroom itself and the digital. Kids could take it home on their digital and one-to-one device. You'll see that type of stuff. For a class like math, I think it's real important that they have a textbook at this point in time.
Okay.
Fair question.
I was going to say, what if you need the formulas?
Yeah.
Or what if it's a history book and you got to look?
Maybe just something to think about. I don't know.
I know that an offshoot of that, Mr. Hurley, you were thinking about the possibility of different groups of teachers sharing FOSS kits.
Yes.
You need to look into that.
Yes, we already have, actually. That's how our number we cut our number down to 55. We were at 60-some.
Okay.
We're confident, based upon conversations with my principals, that we got our number down already, and we're going to even look even tighter to see if there's anywhere we can do it with 2.
Good.
But right now, we're pretty comfortable that we can do it with 3. And so it actually is already, since we talked, it's actually
Great.
already gone down. So
Excellent.
it's a fair question.
I encourage the administration to try those things, and then if it doesn't work out, if
Then
kids are getting
we'll come back to you. If that doesn't
right.
work, I'm going to come right back and say, hey,
Exactly.
we need to order a few more.
Perfect. We appreciate that. The whole rivet theory and all, right?
What's that?
The rivets in the barrel, and you're taking rivets out. Andrew Basil rivet theory?
I don't remember that
Okay.
one.
I had a couple questions. As far as the ALEC program, which is real neat, is that going to be stored on the cloud, or will the student data be stored on our in-house?
It is almost everything. A lot of things are cloud-based right now.
Okay.
Compass Odyssey, all those things are on the cloud.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it will be. They
Okay.
do, if you do look, they do have a relatively robust privacy policy in place to protect. Basically, the only thing they're using that for, they're not selling the information, they're not marketing the information. They're just the only thing that information is used is to help that
pour back
student.
into
to help
the
that student do better in mathematics.
Okay. Are you thinking about anonymizing it?
Yeah, and actually, I contacted them about that particular thing, and we have the ability, if we want to, and I talked to the salesperson directly, and if we want to make it totally anonymous and use student numbers or something to that effect, it has the ability to do that, so we can do that.
Great. Does the committee have to weigh in on that, or is that something you?
We can decide, as we're talking with the company, we
I
can
really
do that internally.
appreciate that.
Yep.
I really appreciate that.
Yep. I appreciate your attention to student privacy and support.
And I just want for the rest of the board to know, the committee to know, that software is so robust that the follow-up questions that a student gets will be dependent on not only his or her accuracy in answer, but also how long it took them to actually fill it in, right? So
It takes a whole bunch of
Very
different
adaptive.
metrics and uses predictive analytics to adjust the course of the program as it goes along. It's pretty good software. It's very good.
And it's used at Penn State.
Yes, it is. Penn State Berks.
I'm excited about that. Thank you, Mr. Hurley. And I'm totaling
Will
your,
that like to be re-licensed every year, I guess?
Yes, it will be.
Okay.
about 100,000, then I just did a rough total. Are we looking at here?
For
all these, your whole proposal?
Yeah, we're looking at about, let's see, roughly 100,000 around.
Okay, thank you.
Like
And
80s,
that
90.
preparation for algebra, that came out of special class, right? Or, yes.
What was that, Mr.?
That pre-algebra class came out of discussion.
The foundations of algebra, of course, the algebra we use in kind of a transitional between the 8th and 9th grade program.
Good.
And we think one of the reasons, if I could add something, first, it's going to help our math program exceptionally at the high school. We think it's going to be real good. And then the thing about this, these kids have not been successful in math doing it the traditional way all through school. This is a different approach. If we keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, we're not going to get this. We believe this has the potential, and certainly we'll take a look at it and how we're doing there, but it has the potential to help some kids who previously struggled with mathematics.
And we also talked about how failure in math at the first level of high school is a key indicator of possible potential dropout. So we're actually interceding on, we're addressing our potential dropout rates by trying to get the kids right into
Yeah, I just hope by this
system
point,
here.
like if I were a student and I were at this level and I was not doing what I should be in math, I might begin to just think to myself, well, I can't do it, and I'm shutting myself out.
Right.
So I hope that these students, we're telling them, yes, you can do it. This is a new approach.
Right.
And they're coming at it
It's
from
like
a positive
lifeline.
approach.
I'm so happy. I'm so pleased that the administration.
And Connor, you're right on
doing
target
this diligently.
with that right there. And students learn in different ways and at different times, and that's a real important piece is being positive with students. And hopefully this can give them some positive experiences in math, and they can carry that on to their other math courses.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing how well it works. If we have, if we can have a report maybe next year after we use it.
That'd be great.
Definitely.
All right.
Thank you.
My next question was the accounting. So will that software need to be updated every year too?
We don't have to pay any more for that software. Once we've bought this, what we have right now, we will not have to pay any more for that
But
software.
it'll stay standard?
It'll stay standard.
With accounting practices?
Yes.
Okay.
That comes with, that one's tied to the book itself,
Yes, it
right?
is,
Okay,
yes.
whereas this is a standalone. Okay, Mr. Rokas O'Neill, anything? All right. Well, in terms of moving this forward, or would you prefer, I guess the best course of action would be to have this on the committee of the whole agenda next month.
Sounds good.
Okay.
That's what we need to do.
Is there a motion to approve these instructional materials and purchases?
Second.
Any objection? All right, we'll have that on the board agenda next month. All right, perfect. Next, moving on to Ms. Mikowski and her special education presentation. A little bit of background, I just asked Ms. Mikowski, we don't really talk about special education too much on this committee, so I thought it would be good for us to get an overview.
I have enough copies here so you can give
Thank you.
everyone on the board their own. I do have a PowerPoint, no bells and whistles.
In terms of questions, how would you like this to work? If we should just hold off until the end, would you prefer?
No, questions are out of time.
Okay.
So,
Oh, excellent. I get all the abbreviations.
Yay.
stand back there.
First of all, thank you for
This is all working.
Yeah.
asking me to present. Just a little bit of background. This is year 32 in the field of special education for me. I knew in high school that this is what I wanted to do and the field that I wanted to be in. And when I thought back to it, that was a long time ago. That was like in 1978. And really, in the scheme of things, special ed is a new field because 94, 142 was only passed in 75. So when I was interested, it was really in the beginning of special ed. So what I've shared, and it's on the PowerPoint, but it's in your packet too, so you can write notes, and it's in larger font, obviously. But I did share the abbreviation and terms. In special ed, we do speak in acronyms, just like last week when I spoke to you. When I'm sharing things like ESY and IEE and NORA, that's just how we speak because that's just common language to us. So I just shared some of the common things, acronyms that what we throw out and what they mean. I'm not going to read those to you. Special education eligibility, a student must be between the ages of 3 and 21. School age, we start when the students come in at kindergarten. However, we do have students who are serviced beginning at age 3, but the BCIU holds the MAWA, so the funds come through the BCIU to service our students. So we do have, transitioning this year, we probably have about 20 students coming in kindergarten who were in early intervention. But obviously, we still have students there because it starts at age 3. So you need to be in that age range, and then you need to meet the definition of one or more of the categories of disabilities, which I'll go into next. But you also need to be in need of specially designed instruction. So a student could have a learning disability, but not necessarily they won't be in special education, because if they don't need anything different to learn, they don't qualify for an IEP. IDEA 2004, interesting enough, that's being ready to be reauthorized finally. But back in 2004, they created a special rule, and that's where when reading was really prominent and making sure that students had a quality reading program. So they made a determination there that said if a student wasn't exposed to all of those areas of reading, they couldn't qualify with a child with a disability. So the qualifying disabilities I listed there. I won't go over all of them because some of them are quite self-explanatory. But to have the disability of autism, that's a disability that significantly affects a student's verbal, their nonverbal communication, their social interaction. You'll often hear of students who they avoid eye contact, they're not able to read facial expressions. Sometimes their communication is extremely limited and they're nonverbal. Also, that disability label has a qualifier of having, supposedly, they're supposed to have that identification before age 3. But that has changed a lot, and you'll see when I show the percentages and the numbers of the students with autism, we do have students who are labeled with that disability after that. Deaf blindness, in your packet, I missed the word deaf, so I added it on the PowerPoint, so you want to write that in. Deaf blindness, obviously, it has the simultaneously concurring disabilities of hearing and vision impairments. Deafness is obvious. Emotional disturbance is a really interesting disability category. I'm going to share the definition of that with you. This is a condition where a student exhibits one or more of the following characteristics over a long period of time. As I read these, sometimes we could probably all qualify as one of these. An inability to learn that cannot be explained by intellectual, sensory, or health factors. An inability to build or maintain satisfactory interpersonal relationships with peers or teachers. Inappropriate types of behaviors or feelings under normal circumstances. A general pervasive mood of unhappiness or depression. A tendency to develop physical symptoms or fears associated with personal or social problems. And schizophrenia also falls under that category. Hearing impairment, again, obvious. Intellectual disability. This, in the past, was the category of mental retardation, where it's significantly sub-average intellectual functioning. So it's not only that you're looking at a lower IQ, but it also has to exist with adaptive behavior deficits. So it's a two-pronged disability category. Multiple disabilities. This is where you have simultaneous impairments such as intellectual disability and blindness, intellectual disability and orthopedic impairments. Obviously, deaf blindness is a simultaneous occurring, but that does not fit under multiple disabilities. It has its own label. Orthopedic impairments, obvious. Other health impairments, this is where there's a limited strength or vitality or alertness. So something is affecting their ability to learn that's not explained in one of those other categories. It could be due to asthma, ADHD, diabetes, epilepsy, Tourette's, sickle cell. There's a host of things, but it's not just that they have that condition, but that condition, it has to be adversely affecting their educational performance. Specific learning disability, speech and language, traumatic brain injury, that's something, an acquired injury to the brain, but it's not a congenital or a degenerative brain injury. And visual impairments, again, partial sightedness and blindness are included there. So those are the disability categories. So just an overview of the process, what happens is a parent can write a letter asking the district to assess their child for special education, or perhaps referral came through a child study team or a teacher. So it starts somewhere where someone is recognizing that there is a possible need that this child might qualify and need specially designed instruction. So as a district, we issue a prior written notice or permission to evaluate, and that's when we're asking parents to give us the permission to assess their child for special education. Parents have a right to say yes or no. If they say no, the process stops. In the past, if a parent said no, a district could take the parent to due process and push the issue. But when IDEA, when it was reauthorized, that we no longer have that, so it ends. But so does our child find end too. If a parent says no, they can't come back later and say, oh, but you didn't find my child.
Is that a big issue in our school district? Parents saying, we acknowledge there might be a problem, but we don't want you to move
It's
forward?
not.
Okay, good.
It's not.
Because I know in some districts, that is an issue.
Right. So that permission is sought. Parents return the paperwork. An evaluation report is written. If the child qualifies, an invitation to an IEP meeting is given to the parents, the IEP is held, and a NORA is issued. That's a Notice of Recommended Educational Placement. Here is the second time in the process that we have to have parent permission. That initial NORA, where the child's found to be eligible, we develop a program, we offer the program, the NORA is our offer of faith. If at that initial time, even after all of that time and energy and paperwork, if we find the child in need of special education, we offer that NORA to the parent. The parent now has a second chance to say, no, thank you. And if they say no, I don't want my child in special education, you went through this process, I acknowledge that my child has a disability, we can't, again, force the issue. Sometimes we find that we have families who might be in parochial schools or in schools outside of our district, and sometimes they just need that paperwork maybe to get modifications at their parochial school. So we'll issue the NORP and they'll say no thank you because they don't want their child to leave that school and come here for the program. But sometimes parents just don't want their child in special education. So there's a timeline associated with all of those things that I just shared. So from the date when a parent signs that permission to evaluate, we have 60 calendar days. That again was a change. In the past, before IDA was reauthorized, Pennsylvania was one of the states that had those 60 school days, which was nice. So now it's 60 calendar days, so now our time is crunched. So within that 60 days, the student needs to be evaluated, the report needs to be written, and it needs to be issued to the parent. So all of those things have to happen within 60 calendar days. Once the parent receives the report, we have 30 calendar days to have the IEP. But we can have the IEP before that 30 days, but the parents have to have at least 10 days to have the report in their hands. Again, with the IEP, they can waive that. There's a signature where they can waive that 10 days, because sometimes it's easier too, when a parent's coming in to go over the report and then realizing that their child needs help, it's easier to do both those things in the same day so they don't have to take off work. So the waiver is right on the form where they can waive those 10 days. After the IEP is written, we issue a NORA. Again, there's a timeline on that. There's 10 school days that a parent has to approve the NORA. They can choose to approve the NORA right there at the meeting, but they can also take the NORA with them. Like I said in that earlier screen, we can't initiate special education services until that initial NORA is signed. However, at every IEP after that initial IEP, we offer a NORA, and if it's not returned in 10 days on an 11th school day, it goes into effect. We hold an IEP meeting at least annually. Many times it happens more than once a year because things change. If things aren't working, teachers have to call an IEP meeting and you have to reevaluate the program. But that has to happen at least every year. Students in special education need to be reevaluated every 3 years, and students identified as intellectually disabled must be reevaluated every 2 years. That doesn't always mean that they're sitting with the school psychologist, because really what you're looking at in that every 3 years is that child still needs special education services. So if we can answer that question and we have enough data to support that, it doesn't have to be a full reevaluation.
So how are they, I mean, how would you consider it if progress is being made and what criteria?
Good question. All our special education teachers, we use a program called Ainsware, which Rob helps me monitor that. And they're required to do progress monitoring bi-weekly for students who are in either supplemental or full-time. Now, some of our students are itinerant and aren't in getting replacement instruction. Theirs are monthly. So we are progress monitoring reading and math at least bi-weekly for those students. And then looking at grades too, and if they're not, if they're receiving replacement instruction in reading and math and they're not making progress with a certain program, we can see that with the Ames Web, and it's time to revisit. Good question. Another huge acronym is least restrictive environment, and that's just making sure really that our students with special needs, our students with disabilities, are educated with their peers, their typical peers, to the maximum extent appropriate. We do offer continuum placements in Daniel Boone. We always start with a regular education classroom. What can we do? Are there modifications we can make to that program? Looking at an inclusive classroom where maybe students are in that same classroom as their typical peers. However, their goals look different. We have a program we use with some students called the Stepwise program, which is it's an intense program, but it works. Then we look at resource special education classroom where students would be leaving that regular ed classroom and going into the special education classroom for replacement instruction because they're using a different reading program or they're using a different math program. Self-contained special education classrooms, we do not have that at Danny Boone, and I'm proud of that. We make sure our students have a chance to be with their typical peers at least some of the time, whether it's specials or encores, lunch and recess, really looking at science and social studies. Then going down the continuum would be looking at an alternative school. We do have students who are in special schools. And then the last place would be for students who couldn't be in any of those environments to look at instruction in the home or in a hospital for some students. So discipline is always an interesting area in the field of special ed because it is different. There are different rules and there's limitations for students with IEPs. So if a student, generally a student with a disability cannot be suspended more than 10 consecutive days or 15 cumulative days if their misconduct was caused by or is related to their disability. That would be determined through a manifestation determination. A manifestation determination is a process where we determine whether those behaviors are a manifestation of their disability. If they are, things are different. If they're not, then their discipline can follow that of a typical peer. There's a area where if the misconduct is where the student's bringing a weapon or drugs to school, they've inflicted serious bodily injury to another person, or they pose a danger to himself or others, then different rules apply. That we do have, if it's drugs or a weapon, a 45 automatic day placement where we do not have to, parents don't have to agree to that. Seriously bodily injury is not defined as a black and blue mark. It's not even a broken arm. It's like a loss of a limb, a loss of an eye. It's pretty severe. So it's not easy to, to be removed because of serious bodily injury. Also under discipline is an FBA, another acronym. That's a functional behavioral assessment where we look to see what's the explanation, the purpose behind a child's behavior, hoping that once you have that information, you can program and make changes there. Any questions about discipline? This is just a screen. Rob asked me to speak to the teachers who are going through new teacher induction, and I just shared what I shared with them. I just tell them to make sure that they know who has an IEP, who provides the services, what's in that IEP, and the fact that that IEP is a legal document. And we, by law, have to follow that IEP. I tell them things not to say, like, I didn't know that person had an IEP. They have to know who has IEPs in their classes, and they have to follow those IEPs and can't think because those things typically don't happen in their classroom, but they don't have to do it. I also explain the role of the teacher, an instructional assistant, as opposed to a therapeutic support staff. We do have some students who have outside support, which would be a TSS. Again, they're guests in our building. Rob and I send a letter out to all of the agencies that provide this support at the beginning of the year, explaining that to them, explaining that they will follow the rules in our building, and if not, we will ask them not to return, and we have done that already. So, contracted services right now that we have, our occupational therapy is through hostels as well as our behavior therapy, physical therapy. Our behavior specialist is Clara Chalka. We contract with her. She does all of our FBAs and helps with our positive behavior support plans. Our audiological support is through the BCU, as well as vision and orientation and mobility. And right now, our nursing is provided through professional nursing services. Looking at our percentages, do you have a question?
No, I'm just looking at the time.
Okay. The percentage of special education students in our district. I'm going to find Rob's little thing here. So this is really interesting because we hear all the time, and it's true, the total population in Daniel Boone is declining. However, when you look at my column, the special education you see is increasing every year. The percentages out on the end are our percentage of special education. In the parentheses is what the state has defined as what the percentage should be. They haven't released the 15-16 data, so that's why you see that parentheses blank there. As far as outside placements, I showed where we were our last 4 years of progression there. We have 36 right now. This screen shows a report is produced each year, and it's always a year behind. So 15-16 isn't out yet. So what you see there is our percentages of the different disability categories. In the parentheses is what the state feels the averages should be at. Caseloads by building. At AEC, we have 4 learning support teachers. You see their caseloads are 19 and 20. Our elementary life skills support class is there right now, and we have 8 in that class. At Birdsboro, we have 4 learning support classes. Again, the numbers are high, between 18 and 20, and at Monocacy, we have 2 learning support teachers whose caseloads are 15 and 16. At the middle school, we have 6 learning support classes, and I listed the numbers there. We have an autistic support 6 through 8 class with 18 students in. We have an emotional support 6 through 8 with 13 students, and right now our life skills support class has 3. At the high school, we have 8 learning support classes. Again, our numbers are all up there. We have an autistic support class, which services students in grades 9 through 12. We have 14 students there. Our emotional support program is full with 18, and our life skills class has 9.
Grouping those students together, 9 through 12, are there any issues there in terms of curriculum and, like, I mean, I think we also had to think grade-wise, 9, 10, 11, 12, but they're all in the same environment, 9 through 12, correct?
Right.
And that works well?
It does, because really, there's right now, the autistic support and the emotional support class are really providing support. They're not doing a whole lot of replacement instruction, so it does work.
Okay.
Whereas life skills, they are doing replacement instruction, but the skill levels are closer
Okay.
in those areas. Our speech, we have 4 speech therapists right now, and their numbers are listed.
Do those all require IEPs as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. We, one of our speech therapists services 5th grade and our life skills class, and then the students at the middle school. We have a therapist who does K through 4 at AEC. One of our therapists does Birdsboro in the high school, and then another does Monocacy in our ICE students. So looking at our staffing, again, I showed the changes there because I think that they're significant. If you look across the top, you'll see in 2012-13, I had 32.5 resource teachers. I'm down to 30. And I showed you in the slide before, my numbers have increased. So that's interesting. Speech has stayed consistent across the board, as did the school psychologist. Our aides, that fluctuates, but that's not changing a whole lot. Again, it's just me. I used to have a learning coach for 2 years who helped in the program, and then that position was moved to district office. Also interesting, there was someone in charge of 504, the 504 program and gifted. However, those have gone away, and those have come onto my plate. So I not only have the special ed, I also have gifted in 504, and then it's just my secretary who does all of the special education, 504, and she also does the access for the district. So, any questions?
Sure. My last question is that change in numbers, how our enrollment's declining and your enrollment is increasing. Is that, like, why is that?
Well,
Were we missing students before that we're now identifying?
no.
Is there any reason, can you think of anything as to why that's happening?
I'm sure we could talk, maybe, and I don't know how much data is available, maybe dig and see if it was full-day kindergarten, if that was the change, if it's the change in class sizes.
Yeah, I'm just really curious as to what
Yeah.
that driver is, because, I mean, it is noticeably increasing. It's not just a statistical.
We are overly cautious, I will say that. But again, just being cautious with child find, our percentages should be a little bit closer,
Okay.
so.
So, yes, just something to
So
dig
one
into.
area that is specific learning disability is one area that we're really higher, significantly higher than the state average.
And you wonder there, sometimes, are some of those curriculum casualties. But there is a question on the evaluation form, like, was this child provided with, the appropriate curriculum? Again, who's going to go on paper saying no? So I think that's a hard call. But I wanted to go back to just looking at the caseloads. I went through and I gave you the numbers, but there's also, there's a cap really. The maximum a learning support class is supposed to have is 20. So you can see we are at the max in most of the buildings, in most of the classes. At Birdsboro, we have to do that creative split, like a 3-4 split and a 4-5 split. And those are just case managers. Sometimes when there's students who are on that 4-5 split, the teacher who's teaching at grade 5, she has more than 20 students because she has some of those students they have a different caseload manager, but they have a different than instructor who's teaching their reading group. So some of those groups are high.
If we were to switch to a K-3 system and a 4-5 system, or K-2 3 to 5. Would that, from the special ed perspective, having students in the same age ranges in a single building, would that help?
I think so.
Okay.
I think it definitely will. Because for regular teachers, you have a team. You have a K team, you have a 1 team, where my team is split between buildings. So while they're part of that team in their building, as far as special ed, they don't really have that team in that K1 team. So that would be ideal. Any other questions?
Going back to Connor's question too, about drivers for increasing numbers, and of course, it's all speculation, right there, at this point. Like, it'd be very hard to come up with the real reasons why, although we can come up with some possible ideas. Do you not think that there's a great deal more attention being paid to the field by parents and advocacy groups, and so parents are much more likely to request evaluation services than they were in the past?
I would say no. We get some parent, and I don't want to downplay that they're not looking at it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say the majority of the referrals and I'm getting is from child 17's the elementary level.
Okay.
Anything else on
What's a child
special ed?
17?
Well, it looks different in each of the buildings. I know Melanie, she looks at the student data. It used to be a form of what used to be ISD, the instructional support team, where they come together, they look at the data, if the student's not making progress, they try different interventions. If the student's still not making progress, they're supposed to reconvene and try different interventions. Almost like an RTI system, but we don't call it that again, we don't use that model.
So it's teachers and guidance and the principal, theoretically, with some
Yes,
combination
yes.
thereof?
The classroom teacher, school psychologist, when she can be there, guidance, myself.
Okay.
All right, I made a promise to our board president that I'd finish up. Any public comment on curriculum and instruction?
Thanks.
Motion to adjourn?
You're welcome. Thank you
Motion
for
adjourned,
asking.
so moved.
All right, meeting adjourned at 7:17.